Delighted to be here, be back in Cincinnati, and where the 2016 presidential election will be decided. And this is the kickoff, I hope, for Ohio voting pro-life. I'll tell you this quick story that Father Pavone alluded to. It was back in 1999, 2000, I had gotten this call out of nowhere from Karl Rhode, who I'd never heard of, to come to Austin to meet with Governor Bush and talk about his Catholic outreach. And I spent the day with Rove and Bush, and when they asked me to help, I said, well, two conditions, that you're pro-life and your vice presidential choice will be pro-life. And he said, no problem, it will be. And so I did it, and I very quickly found that my philosophy background in Aristotle's politics wasn't really what was needed in this realm of politics, practical politics. And one of the things I did was to set up meetings between Governor Bush and bishops and archbishops and cardinals. And it was all off the record. The only one that got in the newspaper was the one with Cardinal Mahoney, who took Bush out on the street to show him off and do a photo shoot. That was the only one that became a matter of public knowledge. But when I went to see Cardinal O'Connor, who I had met once or twice before, because he had stolen my copy of Léon Bois, the woman who was poor and hadn't given it back, he came down and in the chancery, and he had read all the articles in Crisis Magazine about the Catholic vote, that whole series of articles. And he actually had the numbers memorized. And after he was delighted at the prospect of meeting Governor Bush, he said, I know he's a good man because I knew his father, and his father was a good man. And then I felt this sort of tug to ask something personal that had been bothering me. I said, Eminence, I am the publisher and editor of a nonprofit Catholic magazine. Should I even be doing this at all? And he looked at me and said, Deal, you have to do it and you have to win. He said, I can't imagine what this country would be like if he doesn't. Well, that fired me up. Being from Texas and all that kind of thing. Somebody tells me to win, okay, I'm going to win, especially Cardinal O'Connor. So, what is the Catholic vote? And you see all these articles. I have my Google alert on Catholic vote. You see all these articles. There is no Catholic vote. There's never been a Catholic vote. The Catholic vote is dead. The Catholic vote is gone. And all of these pundits, even the guy who's written the latest book on it, completely misunderstand what the Catholic vote is, politically speaking. Of course, there's no block. But the Catholic vote consists of the group of religiously active Catholics, because those are the ones who actually respond to the issue of abortion or marriage or euthanasia. The religiously active, those who go to Mass once a week, are the ones who have historically been swinging back and forth between the two parties. They were the ones who swung away from the Democratic Party with Reagan, being the Reagan Democrats. They are the ones who swung away from the Democratic Party for Bush. Our Catholic outreach in 2000 drew 12% more Catholic voters. 12%, think about that. 12% nationally more Catholic voters than 1996. And in 2004, we added another 5%. And that's including all Catholics, not including the self-identified non-active Catholics. So when we talk about outreach to Catholic voters, we're talking about outreach to church-going Catholics who believe their faith and who will respond somehow, will register the message of life, the message of marriage, the message of the settled teachings of the church, and will decide their vote on the basis of that. Now, in the United States, Catholics make up something like, all Catholics make up something like 28 to 30% of the vote. I estimate, I mean, we know there are all kinds of contradictory studies of how many Catholics go to Mass regularly. Well, I'm going to say that something like 30 to 40% of those who vote are regular Mass attenders, because regular Mass attenders vote more regularly than non-Mass attenders. You know, they're not only good at getting to Mass, they're good at getting to the poll booth. And so what I'll call the George W. Bush strategy worked. We laid out a plan that he would go where active Catholics are. And by the way, this all got started when I was invited to my first Republican National RNC meeting about Catholic votes. And I listened to a very distinguished panel talk about sending the candidate to St. Patrick's Day parades and Columbus Day parades. It was all based upon ethnicity. And I went up to Haley Barber, who afterward said, "This is completely wrong. You would never see me. I'm a convert. I'm a WASP. I'd go to a St. Patrick's Day parade, but probably not, unless I was in New York. Well, not anymore, though. But point is that they didn't understand the John Paul II generation. I mean, this was in 1996. I went to this meeting. And he had been Pope since 1987. There was a new spirit in the church, the spirit of the new evangelization. It wasn't about, you know, getting cozy with ethnic groups. It was about going to people who were fired up for their faith and going to church. And, you know, I'll say this, you think what you want of Bush and Rhode, they did it and they kept their word all the way through. They never let me down. They never made me look like, oh God, I shouldn't have done this. So the strategy is to move small percentages of Catholic voters state by state. And the payoff is this. When politicians see that Catholic voters are voting their values, they begin to pay attention to Catholics when they create and pass legislation. They don't just blow us off anymore, thinking that we have no clout. However, here's the bad news. There is a reason why Catholic voters are not seen as socially conservative, that is, defending life, defending in marriage. Because here are the states with the most Catholic voters. Rhode Island, 52%. Obama won by 27%. Massachusetts, 48%. President Obama won by 23%. New Jersey, 46% Catholic. President Obama won by 17%. Connecticut, 46% Catholic voters. Obama won by, and this is after passing a health care plan that forced American citizens, including people of faith, to pay for abortion. And of course, the Bishops' Conference rejected that plan, even though they wanted a universal health care plan. They had been on the record about that for 30 or 40 years. They didn't want a universal health care plan that included publicly funded abortions. So, I mean, I could keep going through the list. New York, New Hampshire, Wisconsin, New Mexico, Vermont. Only Louisiana, with 33% Catholic votes, Romney won by 17%, and he wasn't that strong of a pro-life candidate in the first place. I always come back to one sentence from then Cardinal Ratzinger's doctrinal note on some questions regarding the participation of Catholics in political life. One sentence. And you got to hang this sentence over all that I just said about New York, New Jersey, Rhode Island, Connecticut. A well-formed Christian conscience does not permit one to vote for a political program or an individual law which contradicts the fundamental contents of faith and morals. What is going on? Because all of these candidates that these states are electing are also pro-gay marriage. They are now edging toward being pro-euthanasia. That's a really big issue in the near future. Look what's happening up in the Northwest. So, Can Catholic voters make a difference? Yes. I'll show you how. In your state of Ohio, the percentage of victory last year was 2%. But you have 27% Catholic voters. In Colorado, the percentage of victory for Obama was, I'm not saying Obama won here, I'm just saying, well, he did actually, 2%. He didn't win in 2008 against McCain. McCain won. Colorado, 4%. Obama won by, they have 18% Catholic voters. Florida, Obama won by 1%, 28% Catholic voters. Pennsylvania, 5%, 32% Catholic voters. So you can see that if you move a substantial percentage, by that I mean 2, 3, 4%, you can swing the election. That's exactly what we did in 2000 and 2004. The problem in a place like North Carolina, where President Obama won by 3%, it only has 500,000 Catholic voters out of 4.5 million. It's all on the evangelicals down there. You know, it's up to them to get it done. Ralph Reed will get it done. So 1, 2, 3, or 4% Catholic voters can make a difference in these swing states. Let's talk more about Ohio. You've got 18 electoral votes. That's a lot of votes. You have nearly 1,800,000 Catholic votes. That is nearly 27% of your voters. Hamilton County, 27% Catholic voters. The Ohio Catholic voters in Ohio, went for Bush in 2000, 2004. They went for McCain in 2008 when nobody went for McCain. Nobody. And they went by 5 percentage points over Obama. And in 2012, even though Obama won, only by 2%, Catholics went for Romney by 55% to 44%. So anybody that doesn't think the Catholic vote in Ohio isn't in play is nuts. It's in play, and it's disposed toward pro-life candidates. We can see from the record. In fact, Ohio almost stands out among high percentage Catholic voter state as a state where life makes a difference. Part 2. 4 misunderstandings that I constantly run into that I think you do too, as pastors and activists. Catholics sometimes are told and believe that they're imposing their values on others. No. Politics is a moral game. It's about making laws. Laws are inherently about morality. They're grounded in morality. As Aristotle said, his politics and ethics were one volume, connected. And our own church in Gaudium and Spes, the church teaches very clearly that the political order is not separate from the divine order. Therefore, there is no public-private domain. You know, that was laid out by Governor Cuomo at Notre Dame in 1987. Doesn't exist. It's a fiction. I mean, why would you cite the church to support the preferential option for the poor or to support the elimination of the death penalty, yet not cite church teaching when it comes to the protection of life? And that's exactly what we have. We have more members of Congress who are Catholic who do that than do not. More members of Congress are pro-abortion, pro-gay marriage than are not. And they will cite Catholic teaching to support a whole range of things dealing with poverty or immigration, but they will never touch Catholic teaching when it comes to life. Unless, well, you'll have 1 or 2 who have crazy interpretations of it. Yes, the cafeteria lives. Second, Catholics need to be reminded, they need to know, that the protection of the unborn is the dominant issue. The dominant issue. Now, I chose that word myself. It's the dominant issue, not the only issue, but it's the one that should dominate your judgment as you make a decision about voting. And I don't need to quote the catechism to you. Catechism's very clear on this. Abortion, no. Can't support political programs or candidates who propose to allow abortion on demand. Catholics have, like Father Pavone and Janet, have been accused of being single-issue voters. No. To care about life is to care about everything that lives. To care about life is to care about everything that lives, because everything that lives is feeding, nourishing, and maintaining life itself. Yes, we are an organism. There is an ecology. And to care about life, you have to care about the entire ecology. Third, Catholics don't seem to get this. Not all political issues are equal. My friend Carl Keating once came up with the phrase non-negotiable. I don't like that. I like the term settled. Some issues are settled. There's no debate about abortion, no debate about marriage, no debate about euthanasia, fetal stem cell research. On the settled matters, the church is teaching there's only one way to go. He says you are obliged to go this one way. All other matters are prudential, meaning there is no one way to go. There are principles you should and are obliged to think by, but prudence is the ability to apply a general principle to a specific instance. Prudential judgments, most political issues are prudential judgments, by far. But prudential judgments can't be presented to Catholics on the same level and on the same importance as settled ones. They're different because there is no, in fact, when Wilton Gregory, when he was head of the Bishops' Conference, he's now Archbishop of Atlanta, when he wrote to President Bush about the Iraq War, he said, people of goodwill may apply ethical principles and come to different prudential judgments depending upon their assessment of the facts at hand and other issues. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. All Catholics bear individually the responsibility of making prudential judgments. We as Catholics are taught the principles by the church. We are even shown some possible applications, but we are not obliged to follow those applications. We're only obliged to take them into account. Now, I'm going to wake everybody up right now. You ready? I'd like to make some comments on the following topic. Catholic outreach and the clergy, what happens from a layman's point of view? And I have 10 points to make, but before I make any of them, I want to make something very clear. It goes without saying, but I will say it, that pro-lifers must not bring partisan politics onto church property. It's the issue, as Father Pavone said, is being defended. It's up to individual voters to connect the issues to the candidates. Pro-life leaders can do a better job in educating lay activists the difference between partisan speech and nonpartisan speech. Now, here are my 10 observations. And now this is going back to, I've been in this battle now nearly 20 years. And I got into the church because of beauty. I mean, if you read my conversion story, American conversion, I have chapters on French novelists, on musicians, on Jacques Maritain, the philosopher. I don't talk about politics at all. But I was tapped, and I said, okay, I'll follow. Number one, goodwill but naive Catholic laypersons will go to one of their priests to talk about supporting pro-life in the election only to be rebuffed, either outright or get a lecture about social justice, or with a nod of the head which leads to nothing being done. I've heard that thousands of times. 2, these same lay Catholics would then begin to talk to others in the parish, only to find many are also hostile or fear politicizing the church or are worried about what Father will think. Have you asked Father, they will ask. Until lay clericalism is diminished, lay Catholic political participation will have that obstacle to it. Number 3, these same lay Catholics, we're following them down the line now, are bewildered by the fact that those in the parish, and of course already bewildered by Father, are not responsive to political engagement on the side of protecting life and end up doing little and becoming cynical about the church's commitment to life. That's where we are. I mean, I know Catholics, activists all across the country who are burned out on politics, but they're burned out because they're not getting any church support. They're not getting any church pats on the back, appreciation for defending its teaching. Why bother? All I get is hassle for what I'm doing. 4, it's become standard practice in U.S. parishes not to talk about abortion, especially during a campaign season, for many, many reasons. The most ridiculous being the charge that to preach against abortion is a partisan activity. That has been an argument over the last 2 election cycles. That if Catholic clergy preach about abortion, they are ipso facto committing a partisan act. That's the Democratic Party's fault. You know? At least there's one pro-life Democrat. In what? The guy that stood up against Obamacare? No, Lipinski. Congressman Dan Lipinski, the sole pro-life Democrat. And God bless him. And we pray for more. This is about evangelizing both parties. We will vote for you. We will support you. But we stand for life. We want you to stand with us. 5, those clergy who do get involved often risk being pushed back by their fellow clergy or by their bishop, which includes the kind of literature they allow to be displayed on the literature racks in the church. I fought all these battles. And of course, any sort of parish-sponsored events that might lead parishioners to connect the dots between abortion on demand and voting in an election. The bishop's own Forming Consciences for Faithful Citizen document, in my opinion, I have not told Father Pavone this, you may not agree, Janet may not agree, has become so lengthy and weighed down by compromise, so-called nuanced language, it can be hermeneutically spun in any direction you choose, which means it stands for nothing because it can be made to stand for anything. 7, perhaps the most troubling problem are the voter guides issued by state Catholic conferences. Let me say that again. Perhaps the most troubling problem are the voter guides issued by state Catholic conferences. These voter guides, oftentimes, not in all instances, grossly misrepresent church teaching on settled moral issues such as abortion, marriage, euthanasia, and fetal stem cell research. And these voter guides specialize in putting prudential matters on equal par with settled ones. So let's say you have 10 issues and each gets 10 points, and all of them are equal. Abortion is equal with your position on immigration. Abortion is equal with your position on universal health care. Abortion is equal with your position on wireless availability, which is actually a big With this kind of rating system, this kind of voter guide, a pro-abortion Catholic politician can have as high or higher a rating as a pro-life Catholic politician. That actually happened to Rick Santorum and a couple of voter guides. He was way down the rating list by a Catholic state conference guy when the other guy he was against was entirely pro-abortion and pro-gay marriage. He had a lower rating. 8. I know you're glad there's only 10 of these. Clergy who want to be involved in pro-life politics and want to make a real difference must be aware of all these dynamics at the parish level and begin by protecting pro-life activists and allow their literature to be displayed if it conforms to the nonpartisan standard. And preach it and teach it. I was a Baptist minister. I know how to preach it. I was a philosophy professor. I know how to teach it. And I know you guys do too. Do it. Don't be afraid. If somebody wants to get up and walk out of church, let them walk out of church. It's their choice, and they're the one making the mistake, not you. Number 9. Clergy must also protect those who leave voter guides in parking lots. This is very controversial. Because some clergies, and I could give you some very funny examples, funny in hindsight, send heavies into the parking lot on the Sundays before elections to intimidate pro-lifers out of the parking lot by saying, Pastor so-and-so says you have to get out of here, or it's against the law to do what you're doing, in spite of the fact that pastor does not have the authority to say that, and it's not against the law. We used to call it the war of the parking lots. I can't tell you how many calls I got on that Sunday from people in Florida parking lots who were saying, the pastor has actually blocked the entrance to the parking lot because he's called the police and he won't let us leave till the police get here. 10. Clergy should affirm the fact that they are obliged to participate politically despite their ordination, and are obliged as clergy to teach authentic Catholic doctrine, and as individuals to support parties and candidates of their own choosing. In other words, you're a voter too. And as an individual, you can be a voter. One last thing to say. I am 66 years old. When I was in my 20s or 30s or 40s or even 50s, I would have never imagined the kind of culture we're in. I wouldn't imagine the profanity, public profanity, Oscar shows, the kind of stuff that's so easily seen by your kids. I have a 19-year-old just graduated from high school, so I've been through that whole teenage thing, and I have another daughter. We have a culture that is teaching everyone, not just the kids, bad stuff every day. Crass, immoral, depressing, cynical. It's not good for people. It's like really polluted air. I would have never thought that our culture could get this polluted and this irrational. And we have, the next president will choose between 2 and 5 Supreme Court justices, which will have 100 years of influence, a century of influence. We're already at the point in American culture where it's going to take a century to rebuild, if we can rebuild. I think we can, because I think the roots of America are deep enough and have enough nourishment in them to resprout and strengthen again. We're a young nation, very young, one of the youngest in the world. There's no reason why we can't undergo a reawakening of not only pride in our country and a firm great things we have done for people from all over the world and done for humanity, we reaffirm our Christian roots. Reaffirm them in tandem with other people of faith who share the same values, share belief in the same God, and who have the same priority of divine law over civil law. I have to quote Yates, because what he wrote in 1919 at the end of World War I is where we are. We're almost 100 years from now, right? Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falcon. Things fall apart. The center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. I challenge all of you to lead Ohio to defeat the anarchy.